Through his numerous tournament titles, record-breaking stream numbers, and of course, his brutally honest personality.
Go skate and snipe, go skate truck! Truck!
Oh, fuck.
The young Philip Dosen, also known as ImperialHal, has become a staple name in Apex Legends esports and in general. But that is just the end of the story, so where did it all begin? To answer that question, we will have to go back, like really, really far back. Wait, not that far. Right here. To May 31st, 1999, when a young Hal popped out wearing a suit in a hospital located in Tampa, Florida. Born to a Bosnian father and a Montenegrin mother, little Hal, like most other American-born children, was in love with video games. He would play for hours at a time, showcasing shades of his passion very early on in his life. His father was more supportive of his gaming endeavors than his mother was, but they didn't give him any trouble as long as he was doing well in school. Hal quickly understood the status quo, so much so that he made straight A's throughout his high school years. Towards the end of his high school years, he began to participate in competitive H1Z1. He gained some notoriety by placing high in the tournaments, and by the time he was in his first semester of college, he got a huge opportunity from Cloud9 to join their H1Z1 roster. They picked him up because of his performance in the H1Z1 Elite Series LAN held the previous year, where Hal placed 4th along his teammates. But with this huge opportunity came a big decision. Does Hal go all in to focus on esports, or does he continue with school? Before this opportunity, ImperialHal had truly never considered gaming as a career. His mother wanted him to become a doctor, and he was studying biomedical science because of that. Throughout his life, he had always put school first and put gaming second. And it was becoming clear that this decision was going to change his life forever, for better or for worse. So Hal made the choice. He pulled the trigger on going full-time as an esports pro, and he said goodbye to school forever. His decision was made easier by the fact that college was much harder than high school, and he couldn't put in the amount of time needed to succeed academically. With his contract from Cloud9, Hal was ready to grind, but sadly, life had other plans. Because shortly after he had signed with Cloud9, the H1Z1 scene fell apart because of numerous issues that are just too much for one video. This was devastating for Hal. You can only imagine what he may have been thinking around the time. Is this a joke? Will I be going back to school? Am I screwed? Well, all of these questions would soon be answered in the coming months. Now, all of this was happening in 2018, and the kids in the back can probably tell what comes next. Peak Fortnite, baby! The hype around Fortnite was nothing to scoff at the time, and the audience the game had built was young and energetic. So joining the Fortnite esports scene was a decision that was definitely on the table. What's more is that it was the most probable choice for ImperialHal to make at the time. It was a Battle Royale game, which meant that some of the skills from H1Z1 would carry over more easily. At the very least, it was better than having to learn to play CSGO or any other game all over again, because that would take a lot of time that he just didn't have due to the sudden collapse of the H1Z1 pro scene. So Hal made a jump to Fortnite in hopes of salvaging what was left of his pro career, but it didn't quite turn out the way he had expected.
And my fucking god! I'm so done with this fucking game, man! I'm so done with this fucking game! Like, what are you doing? Why? Why? Literally a waste of fucking time! Piece of fucking shit!
Passion? I think not. It's the exact opposite. ImperialHal didn't like the game. He was forced to play it out of circumstance, and when you do something you don't truly love, it's really hard to find success in it. Hal continued this hate gaming for some more months until this happened. Yes, the 4th of February 2019 was the turning point in Hal's career. Apex Legends was fresh, it was exploding, and Hal loved the fun and excitement he got from the game. He grinded it relentlessly and was consistently getting high placements on the leaderboards in the Predator rank. It's almost like he was naturally built to play Apex. With the game's overall success and the passion-filled community, it was only a matter of time before an esports scene would take root, and for Hal, a life-changing opportunity would come knocking at his door. On March 6, 2019, TSM would sign ImperialHal alongside Prodigy Aces and T-Hump to form their new Apex Legends competitive roster. These were familiar names to Hal from his days in H1Z1, and it marked the beginning of his professional Apex career, which would soon become a roller coaster of emotions. Not very long after the signing, ImperialHal would be facing the very first roadblock in his pro career. His teammate T-Hump left the game after barely playing for 2 months as he just didn't like the flow of the game. It was easier for T-Hump to leave so soon because of his decently sized following, which was the reason TSM signed him in the first place. Nevertheless, Hal and Prodigy Aces were left to look for a new third, but luckily, they didn't have to wait for very long. On June 13, 2019, the first pillar of Hal's early success would join the team. Albalele was a player making a name for himself as one of the best Pathfinder mains in the game, and it wasn't much of a surprise when TSM signed him to their roster. But just barely 2 weeks after the signing, Prodigy Aces would announce that he would be moving to competitive Fortnite, and did not have much interest in competing in Apex Legends, leaving ImperialHal to look for a third member once again. Luckily for Hal, he already had a replacement in mind, Jordan Reps Wolf, and without ever having spoken a single word to him before, ImperialHal requested for him to join the team. Hal had the intuition that this would be the man to help him get to gaming stardom, and with that signing, the original TSM trio was complete and chaos would soon ensue. The first ever major LAN tournament was to be held on the 2nd of August 2019. It was the X Games XP Invitational, and it was where Hal and his teammates would make history forever. On the day of the tournament, Hal and his team were ready to dominate, and that is exactly what they did. They had an excellent performance against the best in the world, coming out in first place with 125 points, finishing 5 points above Team Reciprocity, who also put on a great performance, with Snipedown, who we will get to later in the story, on their team. It was a great moment in Hal's career and the start of a legendary run that still hasn't been replicated to this day. Right after their dub at the X Games Invitational, they set sails for Poland, where the Apex Legends Pre-Season Invitational would be held from the 13th to 15th of September 2019, courtesy of EA and Respawn Entertainment. In this competition, TSM would place first once more with an even more dominant performance. They went back-to-back on major Apex tournaments, but little did we know, there was War Madness on the way. After the tournament in Poland, COVID unfortunately set in, and scheduled LAN tournaments had to be cancelled. Although the tournaments were moved online, it didn't stop Hal from achieving his dreams. In the next 3 major Apex Legends tournaments, ImperialHal and his teammates would place first place in every single one. This was the GLL Apex Legends Series, ALGS Online Tournament 1, and the ALGS Online Tournament 2, putting them on a 5-tournament back-to-back win streak. And with all these wins, ImperialHal had gathered up a serious following on both his Twitch and his YouTube. He was averaging tens of thousands of viewers per tournament livestream, and the viewers just loved him. They came out because of his massive wins, but they ended up staying because of the entertainment that he provided. What Hal was doing was new to a lot of people who weren't used to hardcore esports. Hal was a showrunner. He will tell you how much he screwed up in the most brutal way possible, and most people loved him for the rage.
I know you I don't need the pad, but by the time we climb up...
But when you have a lot of fans, you're also bound to have a lot of enemies, especially if you're ImperialHal. Some people found serious faults with his IGLing, calling him a toxic person or a bad teammate, but Hal was of the opinion that he was always saying what was needed to be said and that sugarcoating it was simply unnecessary. For Hal, it was all about passion, and they were on an all-time high, but slowly the great walls of TSM began to crumble. Their once dominant performances were about to be forgotten. After their legendary win streak, their performance started going down more and more by every tournament. Probably in part as many players were simply fed up with playing in so many online tournaments without any LANs. There were multiple issues impeding the smooth flow of the tournaments, and a couple of players were falling out of love with Apex, especially since Respawn wasn't doing much to alleviate some of these issues. When new games like Valorant came along, it wasn't a surprise to see a lot of players jump ship with the hopes of getting something better. One of those many players was Hal's teammate, who later announced that he would be quitting competitive Apex to pursue a career in Valorant. It was understandable given the state of the esports scene at the time. But some people didn't see it that way and were of the opinion that Albarelli must have left because of Hal's toxicity and how they apparently had a falling out. Hal's haters of course latched onto this and made Hal the subject of their scorn. Luckily, Albarelli came forward to dispute such claims, and he stated that Hal and Reps had given him the best year of his life and that nothing they could do would make him hate them. Now, Hal and Reps were in a precarious situation. They needed a new third, and ImperialHal knew exactly who to call: Snipedown, a seasoned FPS veteran who came from Halo and was there at the beginning of the Apex esports scene with Team Reciprocity. And Hal playing with Snipedown and Reps was a pretty interesting dynamic to say the least. Hal, who for so long had been so comfortable with bluntly calling out his teammates' BS, had suddenly occasionally found himself on the receiving end of such callouts. He would talk crap about Snipe, and Snipe would clap right back at him, and it was through this team's new dynamic that Hal grew as a player once more. It's safe to say that the TSM Snipedown era was one of the most entertaining things that the Apex audience had ever seen, with Twitch and YouTube viewership skyrocketing. In the comp aspect, Hal and Reps had a lot of success with Snipedown as their new third, and it seemed like the old TSM was finally coming back. They had one of the greatest wins in Apex competitive history during the ALGS Year 1 North American Championships with a prize pool of 700,000.
No fucking way! No fucking way!
Although that game was legendary, to HAL's dismay, they didn't win the tourney because they missed their chance in Game 8 of the championships. But they still came a 3rd place overall, which was a good performance for what you would call a new team. Moving into the off-season, HAL participated in a lot of minor tournaments where he and his teammates found some success. It was looking like they were going to have a good run once the new split started, but little did HAL know that tragedy was about to befall him and Reps once more. And that was the release of Halo Infinite. Sniped being a Halo pro at his core, wanted to return to his roots of competing in Halo. ImperialHal once again lost a phenomenal 3rd and a cracked roller player at that. And this was devastating for him and Reps, as they now again needed to find a new 3rd player, and fast, because there was only a week left in Pro League and 1 month left before the Split 1 of playoffs started. And HAL was once again on the hunt for a new teammate. Luckily, he didn't have to search too long, because the same week where Sniped announced that he was leaving, he had played with an insane roller player called Verhulst in Ranked. He was like a gift from God, right when they needed him the most. So HAL brought in Verhulst, a competitor for Esports Arena at the time, and although they didn't gel right away, with haters calling HAL washed and ancient, they would soon prove that they were a force to be reckoned with. To the surprise of everyone, ImperialHal, Reps, and their new star Verhulst won Split 1 of the ALGS playoffs at the beginning of 2022. It was much to the chagrin of haters who had been doubting them ever since the new pickup, with HAL celebrating in his own way.
Fuck all of you haters! Fuck all of you! TSM is washed, eh? TSM is washed!
Their win in the tournament showcased just how good of an IGL ImperialHal really is. He took a roller warrior in Verhulst with a little comp experience and turned him into a weapon of mass destruction for TSM to take advantage of. With their win, HAL and his team reminded people that TSM reaches for the top. So after that, they head into the ALGS 2022 championships, and that's where things started to change. Because the entire pro scene was plunged into chaos by the new meta propagated by Furia. And at the Rally LAN, TSM ended up in the 7th place overall. This may have been a good result for any other team, but to HAL and his teammates, it was far from enough. HAL faced criticism once more, with his haters saying that Furia's new IGL His Watson was a better game leader than him, and HAL didn't like that one bit. It ended up with a rivalry brooding between ImperialHal and His Watson, often making an appearance on either Twitter timelines as they kept bantering each other. And the LAN really brought attention to the need for good fraggers, because instead of focusing mostly on the placement points, why not just get more kills? Coupled with a Horizon meta, ImperialHal was about to make a bold decision. During the off-season, HAL began to pick up input, as he believed strongly in the advantage aim assist would provide him. He had played controller in the past, but it was mostly as a joke. But this time, ImperialHal was serious about switching to controller, and so he poured hours of practice into playing on the roller, and once he switched to 4-3 linear, he dominated. And throughout the offseason, HAL had participated in a lot of minor tournaments on controller, and he had built up enough confidence on the input. So much so that when the year 3 of ALGS began, TSM were dominating with 2 controller players. Throughout the Pro League, TSM were consistently at the top of the table, and they qualified for LAN in a comfortable fashion, ending in the 1st place for the NA region. People were talking about HAL once again and how good he was to be able to do such a performance on a new input, and they wondered what would happen at the London LAN. But there were some people who knew exactly what was going to happen. ImperialHal, Reps, and Verhulst had done it again. They had won the Split 1 playoffs at London. With millions of fans behind them, TSM were back and better than ever. The haters didn't have anything to say as HAL claimed the title of Monster Energy MVP, a title which he had once lost to His Watson in Rally. The CEO had shut the haters up, but only for a little while. Because with the release of Season 16 came a lot of meta changes, fixes, buffs, and of course nerfs. 2 of those nerfed legends were Seer and Horizon, which, if you don't know, those are HAL's signature legends. For Seer, they made changes to his kit, which made him no longer constantly scan enemies and made him easier to counter, not to mention he lost the ability to get the next ring information. And for Horizon, her tactical was nerfed into the ground, the accuracy when shooting from the lift was greatly reduced, which was a huge blow to Horizon mains, especially the controller players. And with all of these changes, basically every team had a lot of adjusting to do, including TSM. Their Seer Horizon picks weren't going to be as effective as they were in previous seasons, and they needed to make serious changes if they wanted to remain at the top. When the Split 2 Pro League began, we saw a lot of different teams take the lead at the beginning, and teams like TSM or NRG were destabilized from their usual top spots. And for weeks on end, TSM would put on subpar performance. The haters started chirping again, calling HAL a one-trick Horizon. And it's safe to say that Hal and his team had almost taken too long to adjust to the new meta, and other teams are not just going to wait for them. Everyone were almost certain that ImperialHal wouldn't make it to LAN for the first time in his professional career. But when the chips are down, Hal and his boys rally up. Around the last few match days, TSM needed results, and that's just what they got. Despite all their difficulties, despite all the meta changes, despite all of the hate, Hal and the boys had qualified for LAN to the surprise of many, including myself. And we will truly have to wait to see how they perform in Split 2. ImperialHal's story is a true rollercoaster of emotions, from the highest of the highs to the lowest of the lows. Hal has persevered throughout his career. Even when his teammates were leaving, Hal remained steadfast and ever ready to shine at the toughest of times. And now, despite all the odds, they made LAN once again. So we need to ask the question, can TSM do it again? Can they go back-to-back in LAN tournaments? I don't have those answers right now, but I do know that if you like the story of Hal, you're gonna want to learn about his Watson as well, so check out the video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, take it easy, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace out.